Welcome to Women at Halftime podcast, but not just for women, for you men too. If you're at mid-career or the halftime of life, our inspirational topics are not only fun, but also meant to help you maximize and write your next chapter. Right here with me, Deborah Johnson. Well, it's great to be with you all again today. I have a wonderful guest. I just love Annie. She has some of the most beautiful eyes that you've ever seen, and you're going to see those if you're going to be on video. That might tempt you. Beautiful eyes, but she has an amazing story. And I just want to remind everybody to make sure that you also click into the articles on these podcasts. I write an article every week. You can get them to your inbox, goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. I have to say that slow because my husband always tells me I talk too fast on those links. But make sure that you connect with me. Also, we have right now, as this is released, Hero Mountain Summit is going. So you're not able to sign up, but there will be another time that you can sign up. But just make sure you're on all of our newsletters. That's a great place to start. So, Annie, I'm so excited that you're here today. You have such a story, and I hope those that are clicked in now to the video, they are just looking at those beautiful eyes, and they are full of joy. You came from an amazing background, and there are many people struggling with anxiety and they're not able to start again, and they're just not knowing where to turn. They need to listen to your story. So why don't you give us just a brief synopsis of how you grew up?
Yeah, I grew up the middle child of 7 in extreme poverty, raised by a single mom who struggled with undiagnosed, untreated mental illness. And to be transparent with you, Deborah, I literally spent the first 20 years of my life in depression. So I consider myself a person of recovery, but recovery from sadness, recovery from depression, recovery from believing I wasn't enough. So I feel like when you grow up so poor and starving, I felt like I was starving in 100 ways. So yes, sometimes starving for food, but also starving for love, starving for attention, starving for focus, starving for calm. We grew up in a hoarder house. So I say dumpster to dynasty is my story of physically, we lived in a dumpster. Financially, we sometimes ate out of a dumpster. And emotionally, there was yelling and sadness that just consumed our home. And so growing up like that, I literally cried myself to sleep every night for 20 years. And I was telling someone, I got some really good reviews after speaking this week. And I called the woman, you just made me think of this. And I said, I'm crying tears. And I said, but I'm crying tears of joy and gratitude for being able to take everything that was hard and painful and turn it into something beautiful that can pour into other people's lives. And so, yeah.
Wow. I mean, that is so inspirational, and that you're able to, take all of that. When you said 20 years of depression and poverty and all of that you were really struggling. And that's a big step. So we're going to talk about a little bit of that step, what happened to you after those 20 years. And then you've had other loss as well. I mean, you live in Florida. You went through a major hurricane, lost your house. So, I mean, there are things, I just want to talk about this reinvention, process, but you're also, I've entitled this Choose to Soar. And you love the illustration of an eagle. I've used an eagle for years on my hero inside and on, it's been part of my logo for years. And because it was my dad's, and I adopted that sort of soaring sort of feeling and attitude, mindset. So what were the steps, Annie, that you took?
Yeah, there's a lot of steps. And there were steps partially when I turned 19, I had an unplanned pregnancy. And I don't recommend unplanned pregnancies, but for me, it was my wake-up call from God to say, you can either live a destructive life the rest of your life, or you can start to take care of yourself because you're my daughter and I'm giving you a child to love, but you're not going to be healthy for this child if you don't get healthy yourself. So that was a huge wake-up call. Another big part that I want to say about depression and anxiety, because I know so many people are struggling with it, is that when you decide to not be defined by that, I still have dyslexia. I still have ADHD. I still have just gone through a hurricane, yes, where we lost 2 walls and 3 floors, and our house is unsafe to live in at the moment. It is part of a condo that someday will be rebuilt, but it may take 3 to 5 years to be restored. But that is just a piece of me. It does not define me. I've lived through fires and floods and homelessness and constant moving. And I had to go, wait a minute, I'm a daughter of the one true king. Like, he doesn't make messy. And you might think you're messy out there. I always think my faith, when I have anxiety, it's when I start to think I'm in charge of anything, including myself. And when God goes, no, I'm in charge of you. And I got good plans for you. And I listen to that and I believe it. Everything changes for me. Like, I go, oh, this is hard, but this is not who I am. This is a piece of who I am, but it is not my whole story. This is a challenging chapter, but the next, in fact, as I've been walking recently, every morning, God's been downloading words to me like, this is your year of planting. I am not making the kind of money that I have worked so hard to make. This has been a challenging year, and our expenses have been a lot because of the hurricane, right? But I'm like, God's like, just trust me. Don't worry about the schedule. Don't worry about the outcome. Keep planting, keep planting, keep planting. So all that to say, through this most recent storm, because all of these are storms, right? And disruptions in our life, they have professional, personal, and literal, is that I started to look back and go, what are the tools that I am using that could help someone else in their own storm, whether they lose a job, lose a loved one, or go through a tornado or a hurricane. And the S, so I always do acronyms because it helps my brain. The S is to allow yourself to sit in stillness, silence, and sadness without apology. I'm sad and I'm crying out tears of hope, but I'm releasing that and not pretending to be okay when I'm not. I think the T is about time. There's no right timeline. I still have days and sometimes weeks that I am so teary about a 30-year dream that crashed and burned through a hurricane. And my husband and I are not separated, but he's at the condo this week because they're looking at how all of our doors and windows are now failed. So we have no pressure. And so we are separated a lot right now. Like, he'll go there, I'll go there, we'll both go there. So we don't feel settled. So we're allowing ourselves time to heal, to be restored. We're trying to have patience with the rebuilding and the insurance, which is coming slow, right? Always about staying open and optimistic. Like, what is the good? Every day I have a friend, we text back and forth. What's your win for the day? What's something good you can focus on? Staying open, keeping our eyes wide open to the good. God has given me a safe home right now, and I am immensely grateful for that.
R is for reliable relationships. R is for those people that lean in. And I have to say that since this hurricane, the speaker community has been unbelievable in reaching out, sending love, sending texts, sending cards. So who do you have that's reliable in your life that can show up? Yes, it's always great to have friends when you're fun, but show up and be reliable when it's hard, when it's not pretty, and reliable relationships. M is definitely mindset. What I focus on is what I see, motivation in that mindset. So when I walked the beach after the hurricane, if I looked to the left, I saw the ocean waves crashing and the dolphins jumping and the birds soaring, and I felt peace. But if I looked to the right, it looked like a bomb had gone off as the debris and the devastation from the hurricane and just crumbling in front of me. And then the final S is about not allowing the storms to not only keep us stuck, but sometimes we're sinking and other times we're swimming so fast just to survive. And what I want to show people is no matter what you go through, no matter where you come from, don't get stuck. Don't stay with that sadness. Don't sink. Don't get stuck, and soar above. Don't just survive in this life. We are created to soar above. And so that's kind of my lessons that I've learned and continue to learn daily from this storm.
Well, Annie, that's amazing, especially coming up with like an acronym. And so you can reflect on that. And I like that you're able to take those walks. And I mean, you're right by the beach. That's wonderful too, to be able to do that reflection. And you're now, because you're kind of split up on your, you and your husband and looking for, when is this ever going to be done? And I mean, we feel like that sometimes with our projects and everything else, but I mean, this is your home. So, and that's a different mindset there. So Now you live, and you talked about a little bit of the strengths through your weaknesses, where you draw that. And I'm a strong woman of faith as well. And I strongly believe you have to have some sort of power to draw upon in this life. We are human. We're all headed to this. We're all on the same train, headed to the same place. And well, hopefully not this whole totally, it depends on what you think the end is, but we're all, we don't live forever. So, and I think that sort of strength, I call it the extra battery of what we put our faith in, is so very important. It sounds like that's, part of the strength that you have called upon in that. Now, you have gone through different stages of after you were 20, and then you have this unplanned pregnancy, you have all of this other happen to you. I mean, there's going to be some steps in between there and some mindsets and how you came to that point. And plus I want to get to where you're at a little bit more now, but just a couple of things and what helped you during those times.
Yeah, I've always been a woman of faith, Deborah. That's always been a part. I remember at 4 even hearing the voice of God. But what changed after I was 20 and at 23 really became even deeper. At 23, I decided to get confirmed as a young adult, decide this is my faith, not the Catholic faith I grew up in. But then at 30, I was invited to a Bible study. And when I started, first of all, I wasn't sure I was allowed to do that. But when I started studying the Word of God, I always believed in God. But what I didn't believe is I didn't believe God believed in me.
Oh, interesting.
That I didn't believe God thought I was good enough. He thought other people were good enough, but not me. And at 30, when I started studying God's Word, it's emotional for me and watching The Chosen recently, like he would have died just for me. Like that is overwhelming to me, to be honest with you. And when I started wondering, I didn't even believe. I always believed in God, but I didn't believe, but I was curious. Could God really see something good in me? Because I really didn't think there was anything good in me. And when I started to read God's Word and study God's Word, and he was like, I have amazing plans for you. You're the daughter of the one true King. You might by biology been born into a couple where my father was an abusive alcoholic that drank himself to death, and my mother, just for her own mental health, wasn't capable of being a nurturing and supportive and encouraging person. But that's not my story. And it took me many years to realize. And when I started living like that, it was like, oh my gosh, there's enough. There's enough food. There's enough love. I don't have to live scarcity. I can live abundance. And a big thing that happened for me, Deborah, in that hurricane, which was actually yesterday, was 9 months, was I did think I was going to die.
Wow.
Sitting in this room. And sometimes on podcasts, you get asked, are you successful? What does that mean? And I remember sobbing, thinking I was going to die. But I was sad and I was grateful at the exact same time. And I thought, Lord, you have blessed me. I have an amazing husband. I have 3 beautiful adult children. I have a career that I love. I speak and coach all of the, I'm so that if I die tonight, I die grateful.
Yeah.
I have done everything and more than I ever dreamed as a young person. And so I hope that answered your question, but just, yeah.
I just want every listener to get to that place. And there are so many people at this stage of life, at mid-career, halftime, thinking, what's next? What? And you're sitting on skills, sitting on experience, sitting on resources that our world needs. Those people. It needs those women, men as well, that are able to help others, lift others up. Do something in a specific area, in an area that neither one of us could even touch. There's so many of those areas. There's just unlimited. So that sort of piece. It's how my father, died. He was ill and I lost him. We lost him 11 weeks later. It was very quick. And one of the things, and this is how I close usually my keynote speech, what he said to me, he said, I'm not afraid of dying. I know where I'm going, but I really like living. I mean, this is what we want to do. We really, really like living. And to be able to have that sort of attitude and and an inspiration in our lives. What a gift that is if we can give that to others. That's a beautiful story, Annie. And I have not heard it said in that particular way, especially coming from, a lot of people come from like a Catholic background or a church, they've gone, but they don't really know what they believe, whatever. Yeah. I know a lot of people like that, but I've never heard it put in a way that you didn't think God really would even accept you, or even that you weren't good enough for, some sort of relationship. That's a really interesting way to look at it. And how nice that you did find that you are good enough, because that applies to everything. It applies to all areas of life, and to be able to accept that. Confidence is one of the hugest areas, especially for women, of that people need to be boosted up with true confidence, not with just the fake whatever is out there and trying to put it on externally. It starts from the inside. So that's beautiful. So okay, so you live in the villages. Tell us. I have been to the villages because I've been a professional musician for years, and so I've been there, doing music, and I understand that area pretty well. I've not done a whole lot in there because it's just wasn't my total focus. But tell us about that, because that's kind of a unique situation.
Oh, everything in my life feels like a unique situation. People are like, it's going to build character. I'm like, plenty of character. So I like to tease that, some women use men for money, others use men for their looks. I had to use my husband because I wasn't old enough to move into the villages. And so we got a place here. But we moved here at my midlife. We moved here as a safe house. So it's kind of a weird situation, to be honest with you, is that we came to visit another speaker friend, and we were here for 4 days, and my husband went golfing with him, and I called the realtor and said, can we look at houses? And she said, I thought you weren't going to buy one. I'm like, we're not. But in the midst, when the hurricane hit, we had to move 5 times and we had no place to go, and rent is astronomical. So we had another couple that was displaced, and we shared a house for 1 month for $10,000, and we would have had to pay another $1,000 to use the pool. And in that, we realized at some point we have to figure something out during hurricane season, because it comes every year. And to buy a place in the villages was cheaper than to rent for 4 to 6 months. And so, to be honest, my husband and I and our youngest son bought this because we couldn't really afford to, nor were we planning on taking on a 30-year mortgage at midlife or post midlife. And so we're here, and it's a fascinating thing because most people are moving here by choice and like, don't you love it? Isn't it amazing? I do like it. And I am making friends, and I'm so, so grateful for that, because it's been a very challenging, disruptive year. But my husband, he thinks of the condo as our home, but I think of this as our home. So it's a little bit of a divided year. And when we go to the condo now, we can sleep there, but the metal's bended and pulled in on our lanai, and all of our doors and windows, the seals are broken. So water and dirt can come in anytime the wind blows, and shutters blow off the building, and it's a mess. And I don't feel safe there. And it looks like a bomb went off on the island, to be honest with you. But for him, that feels like home. For me, this feels like a quiet, peaceful home. Our goal is to make this where we live during hurricane season and a rental property, so we can pay for it, really. And so we'd be there during the winter months and be here during the hurricane months. We don't know what we're doing, to be honest with you, but safe, and it's cheaper to pay a mortgage here than it was to pay rent. So it kind of was something we just, you just deal with it. Like
you do.
Reality. You do what you have to do. And this feels like a moment of doing what I have to do. Do I think God's blessing me in it? Absolutely. I have met 3 new friends. We call ourselves the Watermelon Walkers, and we meet at 6:30 in the morning. And I listen to their stories instead of thinking about my own. And I know that we will get back to having a home together for my husband and I. And you dream of 30 years of this slowing down, but this is life, right? I've overcome a lot, but there will be more. As long as I'm living, there'll be another mountain to climb, another storm to soar above, whatever it is. And so, So it's
Wow.
fun. And yes, there's pickleball, but I'm working every day. So everyone outside that's retired is like, aren't you going to play pickleball and golf? I'm
Oh,
like,
I know.
they're like,
I get asked that
yeah.
because we were playing at our local little on the weekends, and once in a while we play. And I get asked, and there's a lot of people playing during the week. I said, I'm working. I'm working every day, and I'll go once in a while. But yeah, it's I love my work, but it's very consuming. And so, especially when you put out content and everything else, and it's consuming. So it's good.
People will go, aren't you the boss? And I'm like, yes, but if I ever want to make money, I have to work.
Yeah, it's up to me. Exactly.
Go to lunch or golf, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I can, but here's how it plays out for me. I don't get booked to speak. So yes.
Yeah. Totally get it. Totally get it. Yeah. So that's, yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's using smart planning, and we need to think that way. And you just have to do that for not only having a safe place, but also economically knowing what made sense with where you live. And your condo will end up getting back together at some point, I'm sure. But being able to have both of those and turn it around as a rental on the other times, it'll end up evening out, and you get back up on your feet. But
Yeah.
you've done it before. There you go.
Many more times than I can count, but I know the plan, and patience is not my strength, but I'm working on it. But the unknown is so hard, right? Like, how long will it take? How many assessments will there be? And it's a condo, not a home, or it is our home, but it's a condo. So we're not in charge. The board's in charge and the association's in charge. So you can't go as fast as you want, or, just pieces. And you take a deep breath, and then there's something new. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
And people forget. Somebody told me that right away when the hurricane hit. People have a short memory, and within 2 to 3 weeks, they'll think that you're all back together, and no one will know but those that come to the island and see the devastation that will be years and years. So, yeah.
I have told that principle to a lot of people who are going to memorial services. And, I've been a part of a lot of those as a musician, but I said, you can bring something today, but I said, bring something in a month, bring something in 6 weeks, bring something in 2 months, because people think, oh, well, now they forget it's done, and it will mean so much more at that point, and write the memories down, all of those things. So yeah, it just, people think all of a sudden, no, well, all back together. Oh yeah, you're okay. And you look good, everything there. So yeah, isn't that something? Well, you wrote this book, The Pineapple Principle. I want to talk, because you've written a lot of books, and we were just talking about that as authors. And I read a lot of books and review a lot of books. And so it's very interesting to see kind of why you wrote the book, and what this book, particular one, you tend to write about fruit, because you've also written about bananas, and I guess you're in Florida, you're going to write about some fruit. Okay. So, but talk about the pineapple principle.
So the pineapple principle really was like how can I show people, I'm a visual learner. How can I show people in a visual way something really simple that can have a significant impact? And I think when I was writing it, someone had called me a pineapple. They had taught me the poem, but I always believed, Deborah, we all have a story behind our story, right? Like we have how are you? Great. And then we have our real friends that go, how are you really? Are you okay? Yeah. And you can be authentic and honest. It's not that I'm not always authentic, but that. And so I learned that poem about stand up straight, wear a crown, and be sweet on the inside. And then what came from that is that people felt seen by me, and people felt like I valued them and I valued myself. And then being sweet on your inside. So when what comes out of our mouth and a keyboard and our text message is kindness. And some of my Christian friends say, you just use the pineapple to teach people about Jesus, don't you? And I say, I do. Because when people say, I don't believe in God, I say, okay, he still believes in you. And they look at me and I think about that. Because I didn't know he believed in me. And when I learned that, it changed everything for me. It changed how I believed in myself, how I looked at myself. Thinking, if God believes in me, even if nobody else does, even if everyone else bets against me, what if there really is a God, which I always knew there was, but tell people that and believes in you. So the pineapple principle is like a sweet message with a significant thing. And I always say, like, think instead of thinking about politics or the news or religion, think about being a pineapple and just spreading kindness and love. Like I think we are connected to spread love. And as I mentioned a minute ago, I love The Chosen and I have not finished it, but I started watching it, but it cracks me up. And I do have a weird sense of humor and other people are like, why is it so funny? I'm like, because the disciples are so dumb and they keep messing up. And then I go, and we're all disciples. We're all just a mess. Like we're listening and we're trying to get it right. And we still make, yeah, but what about, yeah. And I relate to the disciples so much in the sense of like, even when we're listening to Jesus, we still think, yeah, but shouldn't I, can I, no, yeah, but no. And I just think it's funny that no matter how much we know, we're going to spend the rest of our life learning. And that Jesus is just love. And he wants us to love one another. He wants us to be connected and kind to one another. And we make something so simple, so challenging. And that's really what the Pineapple Principle is about. And my TEDx, which is Lessons from a Pineapple. I do a TEDx talk on that. So
how fun. I mean, it's really a great visual. And I really love how, I mean, there's so many scriptural principles and, we draw from all of these, but one thing you really brought out was being a lifelong learner. And I think that at any stage is really important. And part of what I have put into our Hero Mountain Summit is reading. I mean, the accountability is huge on accountability and reading or listening to books, one a month at least. And just to put yourself on that track, it's really amazing what happens and how you tend to grow and learn from others. And you learn what not to do as well as what to do. You learn how to write and how not to write. There's a lot that you learn from just reading and ingesting, materials like that. And I'm not a big TV watcher. My husband he will find series that I'll sit in and watch it. Otherwise, but it's not my way to relax. Have
you watched The Chosen?
No, I have not. And I will end up doing that, but I've not done it yet. So yeah, I know that
the man that played Jesus. I always think like how people describe Jesus or what he would look like or whatever, or why people are drawn to him. And I'm like, have you ever met someone that's not very attractive, but they are so kind-spirited that you just can't get enough of them and you're just drawn in? I'm not saying he is or isn't. I'm just saying the man that plays him represents, you just want more of him. You just want
that's nice.
Into that love. It is the most nurturing, loving Bible come alive story that I've ever seen. And I've watched some. I'm not a big TV watcher either, but too many people told me to watch it. And at first it's slow. And then you're like getting to know the disciples and their personalities and why they don't get along and why they do. And it's so beautifully done. It's so like, I'm just like teary every time I watch it. I'm like so much love, feeling loved and giving love by what I can't explain.
That's a great review. And I know it's very popular. It's very popular. So, and I think our world needs stuff like that. There's so much junk out there. And the stuff with, the society that's putting this thing out, trying to go with these trends, and they're not popular, apparently, which is, especially as parents. And what do you want your kids at now? I've got grandkids. So, what do you want them watching? What do you want them listening? And how do you want them to think? Want them thinking for themselves and not just spoon fed. So that's a great review on that. And it's fun to hear about the pineapple. I love, that sort of, because I read kind of a little bit of your synopsis of it, but it's fun to hear from you. Yeah. And so I had another little question of what it was like in the villages, but we really covered that and how you're now establishing some new relationships and, you're walking in the morning. And before we started, we both get up very early. I'm on the West Coast, you're on the East Coast. I get up at 4, you get up at 4. So, but you think that means you get up at 1. So, because our time is different, but it's kind of the way we are driven and working through it. But I loved a couple other things that you said during this conversation, and we're going to kind of tie it up here. But you also said that you were dyslexic and that you've had to overcome certain personal things, but you've written, isn't it, 7 books? How many books now? Or are you?
I've completed 8 books. So my 8th book will come out this year.
Okay.
The intention is to bring it out right at or around the 1 year anniversary of the hurricane. So it is choose to soar above your circumstances and storms, and that we have a choice. We have a choice in every day, in every circumstance. So that is my 8th book, which I've completed the writing. I am still working with a graphic designer on the cover design. I don't know yet. I have some visual, but I'm not positive. And I'm not positive on the subtitle, but I know the title is Choose to Soar, because I don't do newsletters. I do choose letters, because life is all about choice to me.
Yes. And I've gotten your newsletter for years. You've gotten mine for years. We go way back.
Yeah.
But I mean, just to be able to do that, putting out a book is like having another baby. It is, yes, it's a process. So, I've written 6 myself, and, I didn't plan on putting this last one out, and it just needed to be written. So that is my Stop Circling book. But I wrote the Women at Halftime, then I wrote the Summit, which is an allegory, and then I wrote the Stop Circling. But you can see all of those books kind of behind me on my chart. But it's, I think when we have things to say, writing those down in a way that people can understand, a simple way that people, being clear. Of course, coming as being an artist for years, I always wanted to be clever, but being very, very clear is very important. So I think your message is very clear, and especially the heart that you have for people, Annie. It's a beautiful heart, and wanting people to be able to also rise up. And so is there, we'll get to how, people can contact you or maybe sign up with your newsletter. Well, I'm calling it a newsletter. You don't call it a newsletter, but you choose letter, whatever you call it. But what is one thing that you want to leave everyone? If they take away one thing from you, being able to pull yourself out of circumstances to really soar, what would you tell them? What action point would you tell them to do first?
I mean, there's so many things, right? But
yes,
a big thing for me is rewrite the stories that no longer serve you. And what I mean by that is, Deborah, you said, I have ADHD, I have a GED, I didn't finish high school, so I could support my brother, I didn't finish college, yet I've been invited to do high school and college commencements. But those labels, so we can rip off labels. I, at 21, was told I was illiterate and to not go to college because I couldn't spell. But if you rip off a label and just say, I'm not illiterate, I'm not dumb, ADHD doesn't define me, anxiety doesn't define me, depression doesn't define me, we can't just rip them off. We have to rewrite them. And me writing books, I have these words that I know can help people heal their story, and I have to write them. I don't even always want to write them. Writing's really, really hard for me, extremely hard. But what I know is if they help one person heal, one person rewrite their story, one person think, I don't know if I believe in me, but God believes in me, and God's plans are always better than my plans. And he doesn't see me as broken. He sees me as beautiful. And though the world may judge, I am going to believe his story about me. I play to an audience of one, whether I'm speaking or writing. And that's been so huge for me, is to not believe I was dumb or illiterate or worthless, but worthwhile. And so I replaced every negative label with, I'm worthy. I have worthwhile words. I have wisdom. People need my words. People are hurting, and I can be the hope and the light because God has used me and blessed me to be a blessing to other people. And so that's really, don't let your diagnosis or your negativity define you. So what if you have anxiety? I'm not saying it doesn't count, or depression or ADD, or you're a terrible speller like I am. Don't let that define you. That is a sliver of you. That might be your thorn, but it is not who you are. You are so much more than that. And we need you. We need your love and light and healing. Get out, connect with people, learn to love yourself, learn to know your worth. And then, because when we know our worth, like Deborah said, we don't necessarily write because we want to, we write because we have to, because something is downloaded in us and we need to pour it out into the world. And so that's my rewrite.
What a beautiful, beautiful message. I think, boy, that's what people need to hear right now. They need to hear that message that you are enough, and not to let those words define you. And, there's a lot of like false coats being put on and trying to cover things up and to make sure that you look okay, but you're not. And those words don't need to define you, and you can find, true peace, happiness from within first. And then that shines outside. That just glows. It just like those eyes, Annie. So, so how can people contact you, Annie? Best way.
The best way is probably LinkedIn. Just anything. You can Google Annie Meehan and you go wherever it leads you. If you're a YouTube, you're LinkedIn, whatever you are, AnnieMeehan.com or Annie. Yeah.
Good. Well, I'll put the links in the article. And people, when they when they do searches for Deborah Johnson, they'll get at least like 10,000, 20,000. Yeah, I just don't have that unique of a name. So, but they'll find you and it will be in the article too. So, Annie, this has been an absolute pleasure. It's just been so much fun, wonderful time that we had together. And I hope everyone listening got maybe even one little nugget. If they got one nugget of encouragement to be able to, not own the negativity, not own what they thought, they could rewrite their story. And I think that's such a beautiful message for today. So thanks again for being with us. And I'll look forward to being back with all the listeners back again next time. Every week we have a new podcast coming out. And I usually put in one interview a month, and then my husband and I are together once a month, which is always fun. And he's a wonderful co-host with me on those. And then I speak a couple times a month, and sometimes I put in bonuses. So it's always fun. It's a fun ride to figure out what's ahead. So, but get on our newsletter, then you won't miss a single one. So thanks again, Annie. Yes, it was a pleasure.
And I thank you for your kindness about my eyes. I hope that they are the light of Christ. Yes. In the world. And that's my thank you for giving me this, that I would shine. So
it's beautiful. So thanks again.
Thank you for joining us. It is because of our wonderful listeners like you that we keep going strong week after week. We'd love it if you'd share and follow us to not miss a single show and even write a review. You can also find all of our articles, products, and links at womenathalftime.com.